Okay, if you hadn't quite sussed it out, the food is delayed just a wee bit, because I did say that we were just one speaker away. We are going to listen now to another speaker in order to give this time to arrive, but we promise we will feed you, so just hang tight for a second. Our next speaker is on a mission to ensure fair, accurate, and proportional representation of immigrants in the media through the language that we use. Dr. Neda Salahshour has a freshly minted doctorate from Victoria University in Linguistics and Applied Language Studies. She's Wellington-based, and she champions the use of representative and diverse language, closely examining the connotations of the words we use and the organization of information. Those are a lot of words, and I get that. She's here to explain exactly what they mean. Please welcome her to the podium.
Namaste, ni hao, assalamu alaikum, and hello everyone. My name is Neda Salahshour, and I am a researcher, activist, linguist, and a teacher. Events such as this are all about inspiring and broadening our perceptions. So today, I'd like to start off by sharing with you a story, a very personal story, which helped broaden my perception and my worldview. And I don't have a clicker. Sorry. Thank you. So the power of media representations and the influence they hold on the lives of individuals became clear to me at a very young age. I was born in Iran, often referred to as the least understood country. And in 1991, my parents decided to move to the UK in pursuit of better and higher education. Having attended a co-educational state school and lived in the county of Essex for over 9 years, I, in many ways, considered myself to be a typical British kid. And despite being aware of my family roots to Iran and frequent questions about my darker skin and darker hair, I often avoided revealing my origins to anyone. For one thing, media representations on the country was not so great. And in my previous attempts to talk about my origins, I was often faced with a look on the recipient's face to say, "Where the hell is that?" And sometimes, even less favourably, by referring to it as a war-stricken country. Having tactfully forced my Iranian identity out of the picture, I was happily developing into a young adult when my parents suddenly said, "Enough is enough, we're enough, back home." Dumbfounded by this sudden decision, I entered my first stage of shock. This was underpinned by the idea of me having to say goodbye to everyone and everything that made up my version of reality. This was followed by a period of desperate begging to change my parents' mind. But they'd made up their mind and nothing was going to change that. This was when the second stage of shock hit me. That is when I started to realize exactly where it is that I'm going to, Iran. Despite my only memory of the country, one being where my grandfather's photo was hung on the wall, ironically considering that I was Iranian myself, I was flooded with so many negative images of what I thought life in Iran would be like. A life full of backwardness, primitiveness, and where I would be obliged to wear a piece of cloth over my head. These puzzling thoughts went on and on in the final months of my life in the UK until the time came for me to catch that dreaded flight to that dreaded land. However, the real revelation came after I arrived, only to realize that everything was much different from how I expected it to be. For example, I realized that Iran is a multicultural, multi-religious country, where Jews, Christians, Muslims, Zoroastrians, and other religions live side by side and next to one another. In a typical December month, I could take a 5-minute walk to a neighboring suburb and say Merry Christmas to my Christian friend Maria. Yes, the majority of Iranians are Muslims, but what does it mean to be a Muslim anyway? I soon realized that Muslim identity actually falls on a spectrum. On one end of the spectrum, you've got those who passionately, and I use the word passionately, not strictly, who passionately practice their religion. On the other end of the spectrum, you've got those who don't practice the religion at all, but still identify as being Muslim. And in between, you've got all shades of grey. I also realized that as a woman in Iran, just because I was obliged to wear the hijab, I didn't automatically feel oppressed. In fact, when I think about it, I never felt oppressed living in Iran because I always felt as long as I've got a mind to think with, I've got all the power in the world. I also soon realized that some of the women in Iran, they actually want to wear the hijab through choice. And those who don't want to wear it, they actively challenge it and resist it. Neither of these women are passive, oppressed women as the media likes to represent. And yes, I saw all the flaws and the bad laws, but I also saw how people actively challenge those and use their own common sense to live and run their lives. So as days, months, years went past, I could not help but ask myself, why did I perceive my country of birth so negatively? And where did these images come from? And this is how my passion for media analysis started. My parents were very proud Iranians, so they could not have influenced me negatively. I was brought up in the 1990s in a predominantly white British town of Vivenho. I rarely met any other Iranians. But the media was a very highly likely source where I was drawing on for information.